Welcome to Prospecting Purpose, where we explore mining's role in shaping a sustainable, socially just, and brighter future. I'm Liz Friel, your host for the series, with a rotating guest on every episode. Have you wondered how exactly we're going to get to that low-carbon future we all keep talking about? Maybe you already know we're going to need a lot of mining to get there. You probably also know mining isn't a terribly low-carbon activity. How do we reconcile these two realities and take real action at the mine site level, given the urgent need to reduce our carbon footprint now, not tomorrow? That's exactly what we're going to focus on today. Joining me as my co-host today is Qiting Lo, one of our industry's innovative chemical engineers and principal of ELO Solutions. As a specialist in carbon footprint reduction and energy transitions in the industry, she has immense experience supporting some of mining's biggest names from strategy to implementation. Welcome, Qiting.
Hi.
Hi, great to have you in the show.
Thanks.
All right, so let's start with the end. A low-carbon future, which requires a clean energy transition. And a huge amount of minerals and metals are going to be needed to get there. Now, of course, mining is intimately involved in virtually every global supply chain. So the pressure that's coming down on all sorts of industries is moving upstream, meaning mining itself has to learn how to do things in a way more energy efficient and low-carbon way, and fast. I'm wondering if you notice this in your work with the industry.
Yeah, definitely. I think this whole low carbon transition is first of all an opportunity for mining, a business opportunity in many metals and minerals sector. Not all of them, but many of them, and that it's pretty exciting to be a core of that low carbon future. So certainly, I see that, and I think companies see that as a way to secure their future, but also manage some of the risks that they see. Climate change is bringing some physical risks to the mine site level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I actually just listened to a webinar the other day from the S&P Global, and they were saying that 60% of companies on the S&P have very material risks linked directly to climate change.
Yeah, but at the same time, there are opportunities, right, on cost management to become more competitive and to provide a healthier and safer environment for the workers.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you work a lot on carbon footprint reduction with various mining companies, and a pretty significant amount of this comes down to energy. The business case for clean energy is obviously pretty awesome, but for those who don't know, how much does inefficient energy use actually cost the average mining company?
Let's take a step back on kind of thinking about a mining operation as an ecosystem. So on the energy side, you have the supply of energy, and then you have the demand of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And the demand is the energy that it takes to do the activities at a mine site.
Yes.
And in order for us to improve our overall energy efficiency and reduce our carbon footprint, you have to work on both the supply side and the demand side. We
Mm-hmm.
know that mining operations use typically around 12% to up to 35% of their total operating costs on energy. And to put that into perspective, one example on energy costs is a mine that I work with. It's a fairly large mine, and they use 300 million US dollars a year on energy cost. So when you think about energy efficiency and the changes that you might be able to have, even if it's like a 1 to 2% increase in the efficiency, it's millions of dollars of savings.
Right. And I'm curious, with the emergence of all these new low carbon technologies, how you expect this to change in the future?
In terms of low carbon technologies, certainly this global trend of electrification of everything, including the mobility sector, is a key aspect that will impact mining tremendously. Some of the mines starting to adopt electric vehicles will have a huge impact on how we move material at the mine site level. And certainly we are also coming back and rethink some of these opportunities on electric systems such as conveyors or more innovative technologies such as Railveyor and RopeCon, as well as coming back and think about using train or using trolley assist vehicles to do some of the work. So really rethinking how we design the mine so we can adopt some of these electrification opportunities. And the second thing I really look forward is this autonomous vehicles and system that will remove people from a more dangerous environment. And along the way, this improves both productivity and efficiency. And then last thing, I think we haven't, I think something that we will start talking about a lot as an industry is around incorporating zero carbon into the design phase.
I like that you mentioned the zero carbon because I wanted to actually ask you about that. You know, we're seeing growing pressure on companies all over the world to disclose. For let's take the example of disclosing an alignment with the Task Force on Climate-related Financial Disclosures. More recently, we've seen the emergence of initiatives like COMET, the Coalition on Materials Emissions Transparency, that was announced last year. That would create a universal greenhouse gas calculation framework for the industry, and so I see these sorts of things leading many miners to jump on the net zero commitment train, basically. And I'm curious what you think, working with numerous companies at the heart of their net zero strategies, how likely is the average operator to achieve these goals with the current actions and plans that you get to see up close?
Hmm. I think this is the question that everybody wants an answer. And I think if you look at the companies that have made these net zero commitment, they generally have a 2050 net zero commitment with some sort of midterm, either 2030 or 2040 commitment to reduce their greenhouse gas emission to an X amount. And I think companies are not able to really make a plan to fully decarbonize based on current landscape of both where they are as a company as well as what technologies are becoming fully commercialized for them to take on that path. So mining companies will have to do more to really get on that journey. And one of the primary things I think mining companies need to do is to take the driver's seat and as an industry start demanding technologies to become available for their challenges. And by that, I mean, as an industry, we need to, first of all, communicate better externally to share what our real challenges are and to help set some of the specifications on what we really need to decarbonize our industry, but also finding ways to support emerging technologies and technology companies to be able to really commercialize the solution and scale up that solution for the industry.
Yeah, I'd love to dig in a bit, go a bit deeper on your specific expertise around taking the required action. Where do we start, practically speaking?
Yeah, so at a mine site level, let's draw a boundary around just the actual operation at the mine site. We can simplify that into three steps when we think about energies. Step one is the extraction phase, is essentially how you remove ore from the ground. And number two is this material movement phase. Both ore and waste needs to be moved from A to B because we generally are not processing that ore where we mine. And number three is mineral processing of that magic process where rock goes in and it's changed from its current form into something more refined. Maybe a concentrate, a gold bar. So when we think about decarbonization and focusing on where are the highest value, and we think about diesel or fuel usage as a key opportunity, then we will likely think about the extraction and the material movement part. Most of the fuel is consumed in those two stages.
Okay, so where do you find in your work that most companies seem to have the biggest gaps, whether it's a technological barrier or a lack of innovation or maybe just low interest?
Yeah, I think in my work over the last decade with mining companies, things have really changed a lot. I can say with confidence that now, both at the corporate and at the site level, people are aware of the opportunities around energy efficiency and they are supporting such initiatives. But when we talk about energy efficiency or reducing waste, that is still a small part of their carbon footprint overall. And let's forget about the carbon emissions outside of their actual footprint. So here we're specifically talking about what we call scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, which are emissions generated at the site level and related to energy that you purchase. So if we only look at the operation itself and looking at its emissions, energy efficiency can support, let's say, 20% of your emission reduction, but you still have that 80% of that you have to go in order to reach net zero. So that's where things become interesting. If we think about those three main activities at the mine site, are we able to decarbonize this material movement space now? The answer, if you talk to most of the mining companies, they'll probably say no. If we want to switch our giant trucks that we are operating now at the mine site to an electric battery power equivalent today, that doesn't happen. Would that happen in
Yeah.
10 years? Probably not. But maybe what we need to do is both on improving the technology of large trucks that are electrified, as well as reconsider how you want to design your mine so that you may not need these giant trucks.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So when you think about our biggest challenges, what opportunities excite you the most and where's the low-hanging fruit?
Okay, so I'm gonna start with the low-hanging fruit. So the low-hanging fruits are generally things that are not that exciting. So the low-hanging fruits are things we are probably already doing, and we can always do a better job. And in terms of what really excites me, I think there's certainly a lot of technologies at play. Digital transformation, having a digital and connected mind, having that ability to see information in real time has already transformed the industry, and it's going to continue helping us move into ways to be way more efficient. I'm also very excited about the future that mining is a core part of. Nowadays people have not necessarily have the best opinion about mining, but imagine in 20 years, in 30 years, you're in an industry that is basically core to the economy and core to our future. I think that should make anybody excited and should be more interested in seeing how they can help this industry and how they can be part of this industry. So there are many technologies, but I think what's important to think about is by looking at your energy supply and demand at the mine site level and at the corporate objectives, and seeking for the right opportunity to help you improve your site level scope 1, 2 emission reduction, and then look beyond and say, well, if we really want to be a leader, what are some of the opportunities around carbon removal?
Exactly. So you already mentioned electrification as well, and I wanted to ask a bit about that because it's this seems to be sweeping the industry, even with some concerning factors like how do you maintain electrical infrastructure or how long does it take to charge a battery, for example, that operates the autonomous haul truck of the future. Nevertheless, we've seen really cool examples cropping up, like Newmont's Borden Gold Mine, Glencore and Sudbury, Oz Minerals is electrifying Carrapateena, South 32 recently announced something in Arizona. So a lot of announcements, and I wonder how far you think we are from seeing electric mines go fully mainstream.
I think we are getting close in probably a certain area. I think this is a good place to think about mining operations that are on the grid and in jurisdictions with low carbon grid. And then think about mining operations that are remote and probably have limited choices of energy generation. So in places where generating low carbon electricity at current stage or maybe in the near future is not feasible, what can you do to then also finding ways to remove carbon elsewhere to meet your net zero carbon commitments? So I think those are the things you want to balance.
Yeah, there's that great company in Nova Scotia here in Canada, CarbonCure. Both Amazon and Breakthrough Energy Ventures recently invested in them.
Right. So CarbonCure is adding CO2 and mineralized CO2 into their concrete product to forever store CO2 in that product, basically. And we use cement and concrete a lot in the mining industry. That's certainly something we can consider bringing into the space.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I wanted to also go back to something you've already touched on, the Scope 3 challenge. So we mostly still don't include it in the conversation. It's pretty uncomfortable. So to recap again, Scope 1, direct emissions from owned or controlled sources. Scope 2, indirect emissions from the generation of your purchased energy. Scope 3, the everything else, in essence.
Yep.
This seems to be emerging as one of the biggest challenges for our industry as we have more and more pressure to include Scope 3. If that's the source of most of our greenhouse gas footprint and we're not actually including it in our net zero targets, what's your perspective? Like, where do we go from there?
Yeah, I think this is not a it's not a challenge for mining. It's a challenge for everyone, yeah, because everything is at the end of the day connected. And the
Yeah.
reason why scope 1 and 2 and 3 exist is because if everybody under the sun reports their emissions, their scope 1 emissions will combine to be the emission of the world.
Hmm.
So scope 3 is essentially something you have zero control of directly, but you can have influence around it. So this concept around scope 3 emission and why it has become more interesting is because we as companies that have higher impact in terms of emissions should also understand how our products and services are impacting other parts of the world. Some of these leading large impact companies are considering quantifying parts of their scope 3 emissions and finding ways to help influence those other players into their scope 3 emissions to help change the way that we reach our low carbon future. So I think it's very exciting.
Yeah, for sure. So, there's a lot of really interesting things going on for sure, lots that we can celebrate. Um, I wonder if you can maybe speak to what you think the biggest barriers are at an industry level.
I think the biggest challenge for the mining industry to reach the low carbon future is the way that we scale up and support innovative technology that solve our problem.
Hmm.
And I think as an industry, we need to work together because the challenge around this low carbon future is not necessarily a competitiveness question, is more of a survival question. So I think we should work together and trying to find ways that we can solve those problems together. It's hard to change that mentality, but I see lots of people, leaders that are making different choices now, whether consortium or teams or projects that are happening around the world. That's really trying to change that, and we see some examples in action. So I think that's really good.
Yeah, that's super encouraging. So, Cheating, when you think about a low carbon future for the world, and when you think about mining's role, low carbon mining, what excites you and what are you afraid of?
I think what excites me is really that seeing and being part of mining that is going to be central to the low carbon future. I think that's the most exciting thing that we should all think about in the industry and finding ways so that we are the right and the good citizen of the low carbon future as part of the mining industry. And what scares me the most is the dwindling reputation of mining and that we're not doing a good job communicating on some of the things we are trying, some of the things we're doing better. And I think this really hurts the industry and it draws people away from us.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that one. I mean, we've had a bit of a talent crisis already, and with a worsening reputation, as people seem to care more about these things that we're perceived as not being very good at, it becomes
Yeah.
quite a risk, I think, for the brighter future of the mining industry. And in fact, one question that I like asking is if you were talking to a young person who may or may not be considering the mining industry, what would you want to tell them about what it is to be a part of this and what it will be to be a part of this in the future?
I think one thing I like to talk to people, anybody in any age, about thinking about mining and how essential it is to our everyday life is the concept of what you can't grow, you have to mine. So if you start with that concept and thinking about what is it that we use comes from mining, then naturally you would want to learn more about this. And I think that's just initially finding ways to generate curiosity around the concept of mining and what that really is and it takes to be mining.
That actually leads in really well to my question about purpose. You know, the show is called Prospecting Purpose, and I always want to ask people what purpose means to them. So, what does purpose mean to you for mining, for low carbon mining? When you think about the future.
Yeah, I see this as an industry with a huge impact in terms of the emission, and I see this industry as huge impact as in the solution as part of that low carbon future. So I think being able to work in this space and helping mining companies to to either identify the path or pave the road to that low carbon future really has a very huge impact. And I'm really excited, and I'm really lucky to be able to work in this space where I have some skill sets that are relevant and that I can contribute to that goal.
Well, that's all for today's episode. This is Liz Friel on Prospecting Purpose. Thanks for joining us, and thank you to Chi Ting for being my co-host today.
Oh, thank you.
If you want to learn more, check out the show notes for links on all that we covered today. See you next time.